Welcome to the Future of Customer Service podcast. I'm Andrea Paulton from Inbenta, and I will be interviewing customer support and service professionals to see what is currently working well, what issues they're trying to overcome, and the future success of customer service. Hello there. Today we have Sara Feldman. She's the Customer Success Enablement Program Manager at FastSpring. Thank you so much for being here, Sara. Can you tell us a little bit what you do at FastSpring and explain what that title means?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here today. So, first, I should say that I'm fairly new into my role at FastSpring. I think I just crossed my 4-month anniversary. So, still ramping up in many ways, but I've been able to do some good things so far that I'm happy about. So, really, I've been brought on to, I would consider it more like knowledge management or knowledge program enablement. And I focus on how we can better leverage knowledge to improve customer support, customer success, and ultimately customer self-service.
So do you work with the actual customer service agents, or do you support them as a program manager and bringing new things on and looking at metrics and that type of stuff?
Yeah, great question. I'm actually embedded within the support team right now, which I love. Is actually the beginning of my career as a technical writer. I started as a technical writer embedded with the support team, and I've moved across a few teams throughout my career, but I'm back again with support, and it's really a great place to be. It's a great way to quickly get oriented into what's really happening with customer experience at a company.
Oh yeah, because I've seen that where people that do similar things like you, they're not in customer service and they get
Mhm.
everything later and metrics are coming way too late. And then
Yeah,
they're not really on the phone and they're not hearing them and they're not in the same room with them. And it
yeah.
really doesn't really help. And it's being on the front line is really what works really well. So let me
Yeah.
ask you, are you on the front line right now or not so much because of COVID?
No, we are. Our company's growing. Our customer activity is increasing, and our support team, I would say, is busier than ever. So the only folks that are more on the front line than me are certainly the actual customer service agents and customer success managers that are responding to customers directly. But I try to be just one step behind them, helping enable knowledge and the latest information from other teams that they need to support our customers.
Okay. And so let me ask you, I know you've only been there for 4 months, but you're already bringing in new ideas and bringing
Mhm.
in new processes and that type of stuff. But I want to know overall, what is FastSpring doing to promote great customer service?
Yeah, great question. There's a bunch of things. The main thing is just being as responsive to customers as possible. I would say that summarizes it. For based on our business model, which I don't need to get into, but when our customers are successful, literally that increases our success. So we have a vested interest in them being successful. And so the quicker, I would say, like the quickest response time, the quickest that we can help them resolve any issues and get back to doing what they need to do, that's our focus for great customer service.
Yeah, that makes sense. So right now, everybody's complaining about limited resources. But even before COVID, we always heard customer service teams being like, there's not enough people, there's not enough time, there's not enough budget. What
Yeah.
are you guys doing? How are you guys managing any lack of resources that you may have?
Yeah, totally agree with that perspective. I think you hear it. I think you hear it everywhere. I mean, it kind of makes sense from an organizational perspective that you're going to often have less resources than too many resources, because as soon as you have more resources, you're going to take on more work and then you're going to be under resourced again. So, I think about three things when it comes to how we try and tackle what we need to do with limited resources. The first is constant reprioritizing. There's a lot of variables that go into that in terms of customer needs, business needs, what's changing from day to day. Certainly in our business, we have hour by hour changes. So being in constant communication among the team, across teams, we have a lot of constant communication with our finance team due to our platform. And like I said, constantly reprioritizing, making sure that we're always tackling the most important thing, real time.
Yeah.
Another thing that we're driving towards to help with resource issues would be self-service. That's a big part of why I've been brought on to improve our customer self-service experience. The more that we can enable our customers to help themselves, they prefer it, and it frees up resources on our end as well. And then the third thing, this is something I'm constantly trying to work on myself, is really identifying what's the next best thing we can do to optimize with what we have going on right now. And that often means de-scoping. You have a vision of this next, iteration, or this next improvement that you want to make, and you might have a great vision, but often de-scoping quite significantly is the best way to get that next thing implemented. It requires less cross-functional resources, it gets implemented faster, and so always trying to figure out what that next best change is to make.
Yeah. I like the de-scoping. I think that's actually something that I haven't really heard too much, but it's true. We have to do that. We have to really look at things and de-scope. I like that. And then how do you measure success of your customer service?
Yeah, great question. So my boss is the head of support. So she looks at your traditional support metrics, the ones I'm sure you hear about often, CSAT, NPS, time to resolution, those types of things. We're often looking at that. The main thing that I've been brought on to help with related to that, as I've mentioned with self-service, is reducing volume. So for us, that means reducing the number of interactions per case where possible, and then driving situations to self-service to reduce that overall volume coming into the support center, again, because that's ultimately better for our customers as well.
Yeah. So you kind of hinted at this, I think, in the last, not this question, the question before, when you were saying your 3 points. Number two, what are you guys doing with artificial intelligence? Like, are you guys actually using that right now? Was that what you were kind of talking about in your number 2 point earlier?
We're constantly improving self-service. We aren't using AI much for self-service right now. I would say, in my experience, I've tended to work for smaller software companies, so I think this is generally true, is that AI is a little bit more about augmenting the agent experience, making agents more efficient and enabled, than necessarily altering the customer experience. I think at bigger companies, when I think about my interactions on Amazon and Netflix and big companies like that as a customer, I think you see AI in play a lot more. But for smaller software companies, I think you more often see it as a tool to make agents more efficient with, real-time access to knowledge and data and trends analysis and things like that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Tell me then about the self-service a little bit. So how does your customer utilize the self-service that you have?
Yeah, so most of it is content based. So it's on our customer support site. We have a couple customer segments with different sites oriented towards them, trying to make it as quick and easy as possible for that customer, whoever they are, to find the knowledge that's going to solve their issue. And so it's constantly refining and retooling almost that landing page experience, like where does that customer first land in a service interaction experience, what information is presented to them. You want to make it possible for them to certainly create a support request, but how are you also providing knowledge along the way that makes it possible, if it's possible, for them to solve the problem on their own?
Yeah, that makes sense. So let me go back to the artificial intelligence question, not for you and your company FastSpring, right? Thinking of you, Sarah, yourself, what do you think is going to be the future of AI and customer service departments?
Ooh, interesting question.
Putting you on
Uh,
the spot.
yeah, hadn't thought about it in quite that way. I think, let's see. I think in general, AI is augmenting our experience probably slower than we all thought it would, because there's a lot of learning and retooling that has to happen along the way. I think as consumers, we are still getting used to interacting with AI based tools as opposed to human based tools. So I think in general, it's a bit of a 2 steps forward, one step back type evolution with AI, but we're going to see it a lot more when it comes to simple interactions. I think if there's a simple interaction with few variables that a customer needs, if you think about your typical password resets and simple configuration changes, I think AI is going to drive those types of interactions. But as soon as you get into more complex interactions with multiple variables, I think it'll be a while before AI is fully, driving that experience.
Yeah. And I do think that people thought we'd be a little bit further ahead. Like in some ways we are really far ahead, but the
Yep.
masses aren't. I mean, I remember the very first time I saw virtual reality and you had these like crazy goggles on.
Yeah.
I really thought maybe by 2020, everyone's going to walk around with goggles and it's
Right.
not happening.
Right. Right. Or we thought huge, categories of jobs would be eliminated by now. And I think we're just seeing that this technology is changing how these roles work and sometimes shifting them, sometimes making them more efficient, but we haven't seen the dramatic changes I think that we maybe would have predicted 10 years ago.
Yeah, totally. I really want one of those. I don't know if you ever watched the Jetsons, the cartoon, but I want one of those flying cars.
Yes.
That's what I'm waiting for.
I'm ready for that too.
Yeah. All right. Last question. So, what is the number one advice that you have for customer service departments?
Yeah, great question. So I come from a technical writing background, as I said, and then really focused on knowledge management. So I really see and experience knowledge as a key enabler for digital transformation and customer service improvements. So my advice for customer service teams would be to really look at knowledge cross-functionally as an enabling tool to improve internal efficiency and customer experience. And so that, for example, it's blurring the lines a little bit about what is knowledge. So case notes and case information versus documentation, they're often thought of different things, but really they're just different outputs of the same information. And I think if we can blur those lines and have teams work more collaboratively real time, capturing that knowledge and getting it real time in front of both the internal folks and the customers who need it, I think that's the way to move forward.
Yes, I love it. Great advice. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, thanks. I had a great time.
Thanks so much for tuning in. This podcast was brought to you by Inbenta. Inbenta Symbolic AI implements natural language processing that requires no training data with Inbenta's extensive lexicon and patented algorithms. Check out this robust customer interaction platform for your AI needs, from chatbots to search to knowledge centers and messenger platforms. Just go to our website to request a demo at inbenta.com. That's INBENTA.com. And if you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave us a review. Thank you.